This is Harley Hartwell, and you're listening to the Case Closed Podcast.
You are listening to the Case Closed Podcast, and I'm your host, Professor C. I want to welcome everybody to this episode, and today, everybody, we are taking a deep dive into the Singapore English dub of Detective Conan. I know I had talked about on our last podcast that we would, be covering this today, and I'm happy to say that, definitively we have everything that we possibly could of the Singapore dub at this given moment. The help of Joe Murray, who has provided the episodes for this dub, we have 22 of the 52 episodes that they recorded in Singapore and at Odex and Voiceovers Unlimited recorded, and it's all thanks to Joe, really. And people may want to, know how did that come about. Before I get into the in-depth about this dub, I just want to say Joe did something very, I would say, unconventional in the sense that, backing up a little further, that this show did not have a home release on VCD, DVD, VHS, anything like that in Singapore back in 2003 or 2004. So Joe was, at the time of recording, was recording and then taking copies of the production home and then copying it onto another disc. And so in doing that has preserved a large chunk of the episodes that they ended up recording overall. There's no awareness that Joe knew it wasn't going to be released or anything like that. I think Joe wanted to save his work when he was recording, and that was a great way for him to do that. And so because he did that, we now have an opportunity to view something that to many people was just lost to history, or a lot of people, in my case even, that I didn't even know about. I've been doing the Case Closed Podcast since 2011, and I must tell you, the first time I even heard about a Singapore English dub of this was in December of 2019. So I'm pretty new to I'd say pretty late to the party as far as knowing that there was even another English dub. Of course, I talk about from time to time that YouTube video that I came across years and years ago where it had a bunch of different voices, and somebody had labeled it as an alternative Funimation dub. So somebody out there had some footage of this particular Singapore dub at some point, and I don't think knew what it was, because obviously there was no alternative Funimation dub or anything like that ever, and anything like that. So Poster may not have even known what he or she had at the time. Now we have a gold mine of episodes that a lot of people, it was lost to history for a long time. So really, really cool to be able to have that and to be able to now share that with a large group of people. We're very, very fortunate that Joe did that and was able to kind of keep a hold of that, and how interesting it is now, in 2020, we have Detective Conan, episode 1 coming out in English, and Detective Conan movie 22 coming out in English in a dub where they have gone back to using the Japanese name in an English dub. And the funny thing is, in the Detective Conan Singapore dub, which is the first English dub ever of the series, they were already using the Japanese names. They didn't do any like we did here, we did localization and had Jimmy and Rachel and George and all these, Richard and all that. So we had some localization here, and they weren't even thinking about that over there. They were, using everything, as far as Japanese names and everything like that from the go. So it's very interesting how now everything, it seems to have kind of come full circle, and being able to see this first English dub really gives fans an opportunity to see, what kind of paved the way for what came, with Funimation, and now obviously Bang Zoom and TMS working hand in hand on the English dub of Detective Conan, and in whatever form they are doing it. It looks like at least films. I mean, they've done movie 21 and 22 that we know of, and then episode 1. If there's anything else, we'll be waiting for announcements, but how cool in 2020 we found a treasure trove of old content that is now 17, pretty much 17 years old, and hasn't been worked on in a long time. But I want to go ahead and dive into this a little bit. We have really been talking about the Singapore dub a lot, and people kind of want to know, well, why? It was 52 episodes of stuff that, well, we've already seen it. and it's episodes that a lot of us have rehashed. Seasons 1 and 2 by fans have been seen a lot, whether it was on Adult Swim and the Funimation version, back in 2004 to 2005, or buying the DVDs and seeing it that way, or online, or when the series was available digitally. People have mostly seen these episodes and grew up with them, part of their childhood, and same with me as well. So why is this a big deal? Well, guys, this is the first group to do this show in English, and use not only the proper names, but to also try to voice these characters for the first time in English. These characters had never had an English cast before, and primarily, especially like with a lot of these early dubs, a lot of these guys didn't know a lot about their characters and didn't really have a great backstory on them to really work with, especially where you see where the series was 17 years ago, and especially where it is now. The character development was there for a lot of them, for the characters back then, because obviously back then in Japan it was already 300 plus episodes. But the voice actors really didn't have access to a lot of that information. Now, I did recently find out from Joe that they actually did receive at one point I guess at least a couple of episodes in Japanese with Japanese audio, but they really didn't sit down and view that, or Chuck Powers, who was directing them, really didn't make it a priority, I think, to try to match the work that they did in Japan. So while it was there and while it was available, even with just a couple of episodes, there's really not a lot of background for these guys to work with. So they had to kind of go and make their own characters. And I'll tell you, for Joe Murray, for example, voicing Conan and Shinichi, very, very interesting. That's never happened in another dub, at least that I'm aware of, and I've seen a good amount of Conan dubs, non-English speaking, as well as the Japanese dub, where I'm literally all caught up to all 975 episodes and still going. I've never seen that before, and the fact that they chose to approach it that way is a little unconventional, but you have to also stop and think about it from a realistic perspective. It makes a ton of sense. It's the same person, so maybe they should have the same voice in certain aspects. I'm not saying that's going to work for every show or every anime, but if you're a guy like Joe Murray, who is talented and can do different voices and can, go to different places and stretch and go lower in different places, in terms of registry and voice, why not approach it that way if you can get the same person to voice that character? And he also voices the father, Yasuko Kudo. He voices him as well. So, it's really cool. He's the same person voices the dad, the kid, and the teenager in the series. But it works, and I think he pulls it off really, really well. And that's why, not only are we going to talk about these episodes a little bit today, and the voices in particular is what we're going to touch on. I've got links in the description. We're going to have links to 2 different mega folders. One is the really, really high quality stuff. It does take up more storage though. I mean, it's like 30 gigs for 22 files. So that is a pretty heavy stack. The Apollo Dub Archive group has been fantastic as far as distribution on these episodes and putting these out. I want to give them a huge shout out. Their whole community, that's just a great group of guys and gals. I mean, they are fantastic. I have loved my interactions with them. They are just probably some of the coolest people you'll find on Discord and on the web, preserving content that people haven't seen for years and years, and preserving a lot of people's childhood, especially when it comes to Singapore media or any media, anime related. So those guys are doing fantastic work. In my position, I have so much respect for what they do, and they have been nothing but gracious to me and have been fantastic. We're going to have a link to their website as well, so you guys can check out what they're doing, and just, connect with them and talk to them. They're just fantastic people. They have a folder for us as well in Mega, but it is a little bit, the file size is a little less, which means the quality takes a tad bit of a hit, but as far as visuals and looks, still very, 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 very good. And it will take up a lot less space on your hard drive. So we're going to have links to both of them so you guys can, choose which ones you want to download or make decisions like that. Just so you can maybe, if you don't have a removable hard drive and you're downloading these to your PC, the smaller file size might actually end up working for you. So we'll have links to both. And, another thing too, we'll talk about too, is that the episodes that Joe saved, for example, 22 of the 52, had a lot of really important moments. We had a lot of good characters were introduced, for the first time in English. The dad, Yusuko Kudo, Eri, Ron's mother, is introduced and voiced by Denise Tan. So for a lot of these voices, especially, we have now not just their appearances, thanks to Joe's memory and being able to, recount a lot of stuff, because I've asked him a ton of questions as far as, well, who's voicing this character? Well, who's voicing that? Because you want to make a note of these things in particular so that you can have a reference to who the first English voice was and hear what these characters sounded like for the first time in English. Like a lot of people know, Chuck Powers voiced Heiji in this dub, so he's the first English voice of Heiji / Harley Hartwell for us. And so we, now have a good record of, okay, not only did we get 22 of the 52, but now we have a really good, these are probably 22 of the best episodes we could have gotten, because they have basically every major character introduction that you had in the first 52 episodes to begin with. So now these voices, we know who these people are, whereas a few years ago, I know that wiki page has been up for the Singapore dub for years and years. There just wasn't a ton of information on that. So, and Joe has answered every question I could possibly ask him about this dub. In particular, how directing was and how he was cast. It was very, he was the last one to audition for Conan, got part. So he had voiced the character for 52 episodes, spent a lot of time, obviously, with that voice and with that character. And I know for us as a community, Sing of Conan's almost at 1,000 episodes, so it's like, well, 52 episodes. I mean, guys, a lot of the anime that comes out is between 13 and 26 episodes. We have to remember, and people say, well, case closed, the Funimation dub was only 130 episodes. At the same time, 52, 130, that's a heavy chunk of time. When you spend that much time recording for that's quite a bit. That's not, I spent a few weeks coming in and doing a couple, a character voice, and then that was it. No, I mean, these guys spent months and in some cases years voicing that character. So this is it's a really big deal, and not only to have this, but for people who maybe grew up with and find it after it initially aired on television, and now they're, it's kind of one of those things where the dub is in the wind, and that's why the Apollo Dub Archive Group has been so great in helping preserve this content. And what's really cool, I think, too, using that phrase, we have a really good beginning and a really good ending. We have first 3 episodes really of this dub, and we've also got about the last 4 to 5 episodes of this dub. So we have a good beginning and we also have a good ending, and then we've got some really good episodes sprinkled in the middle there, like the local diner where Ron's mother is introduced. We have episodes 1, 2, and 3, so really, we get to see, Shinichi Kudo a lot, voiced by Joe Murray, and then we see him again when he turns back into Shinichi when in the diplomat case, and then we see Heiji's introduction, so we get to see Chuck Powers come in and voice Heiji and what that sounds like. We get to see just so many great moments. We get to see Dr. Agasa, we get to see the Junior Detective League, or the Detective Boys. We get to see all of them basically in the series, and now we can put, we think this is who voiced this person. Well, now we know who voiced them because right from somebody who was in the room doing the recordings, and not only doing that, preserving this content at the same time. And in talking to Joe, and putting out certain episodes here and there, and we've been sharing the Mega folder as much as we can, through Reddit, Discord, all over the internet that we can put it, just so people can see it. our hope is, and well, mine personally is that some people see this and, who knows, maybe somebody has a recording or two of other episodes that want to contribute to the pile. And if they do that, then we can even add more than 22. We can maybe get up to 25, 26. I don't know what recording is like in Singapore or what media really was like in Singapore back in 2003. I'd love to be educated on that. Stuff like that is fascinating to me. In seriousness, this has been a treasure trove of episodes to find. Really, with favorite batches, really that first 3 and those last 5, just because we have a good beginning and an ending. Even on the last episode too, they have the next episode preview recorded for that too. And I was asking Joe, I go, what's with that? Was it a situation you didn't know where you were going to do more? And he said, well, that was just there because we were contractually obligated to do that. By then, we knew we weren't going to do, and they were going to move on to other projects. I think they were going on to One Piece next, do One Piece in Singapore. And by the way, that whole catalog of One Piece is available on the Apollo Dub Archive website if you guys want to view it. Just a FYI. They also have the Yu-Gi-Oh! Singapore dub too. I'm not sure what interest level there is as far as that particular dub, but if anybody wants to check it out, it's definitely on that website. So really cool to have a beginning and an ending, and then really good episodes kind of sprinkled in the middle there. But we're, always on the hunt to try to find more if possible, and really getting to talk with Joe and kind of have a good rapport with him. We actually got to meet up and sit down for a cup of coffee and talk about this series even more as far as other works that he's been involved in. And I think the biggest thing, I get from him, all these years later working on the dub, I think he wants to know what fans think of the work. Do they feel like all these years later it stands up? Does it not? He's very open to how people feel about it either way. I welcome that from people too. Give honest feedback. Let us know what you think of this dub and everything that, kind of comes with it. We have, some really cool things. I'd say my favorite voices, if I had to go into it the most, if I'm being really honest, I enjoyed everything Joe did with Shinichi and Conan. I thought, it's kind of weird because, most people cast little kids as females. And, like we did in our English dub when we did, when we did a fan dub of it, our first 4 episodes, we have a kid voicing, like a male voicing a little kid. And they did the same thing in Singapore with Joe being a male and voicing a little kid. So they cast that to a female. So that's pretty cool that they did that, kind of approached it that way. But my personal favorites, I would have to say Shinichi and Conan, because I did not, when I heard about Joe doing both, I was a little concerned about that at the beginning, to be honest. But I like how the change up kind of came, and it's really hard. It would be really hard to tell that those are the 2 of the same people to me. Same when he voices the dad, because I really didn't know he voiced the dad, so he really did a good job of changing his voice. I'd say that's one of my personal favorites too, is him voicing Yasuko. And I would say my favorite voice in the whole thing, definitely Brian Zimmerman doing the Inspector, Inspector Megure. He did a fantastic job with that character. That might be the best voice I've probably heard, English, Japanese, any dub. Brian Zimmerman's version of that character, spot on. Just nails it, does a great job. I'd also say Su Ping doing Mori Ran. Really loved the work she put into it. Overall, that was just fantastic work by her. I would say those are definitely my favorites. And Chuck Powers, Mori Kogoro, I did kind of warm up to that. I wasn't a huge fan at the beginning, but I kind of warmed up to it as it went. And, I'm going to continue to watch more and more and kind of develop more thoughts on that character. But I thought, his portrayal of Mori actually was pretty good. I wish he was just a tad bit less aggressive, because it feels like he really over-attacked on some of his lines and line delivery instead of it being a little bit cleaner. And I'm not trying to be rude in any sense to that. I just kind of feel that way, that he kind of went after it a little too much on some of those lines. But I thought he had a pretty good change-up, did Heiji, and kind of dropped that registry down. I kind of wish he had done that a little bit for Mori. But overall, I'd say those are my favorite voices. The first one first episode we did was episode 41, which was the championship flag tearing case, and that was, getting that one out of the blue, being the first episode we got from Joe. That was really cool to see that, he has something this deep in the series. Okay. And then, the more and more we talked, we got, episodes 1 through 3. And I think if you've heard my podcast with Joe B, you'll understand how difficult those first 3 were because of the disc and the condition it was in. Through no fault of Joe. I mean, if you have discs that sit out in the sun or sit on a shelf and get sunlight, nobody really, let's say 15, 16, 17 years ago knew anything about disc rot. So, or the disc already was that way when he downloaded the material to it. It's really hard to say. Despite the challenges of that, we really got to save 96, 97% of all that content, because all we had to do was delete the first 30 seconds of the episode 2, and then I just filled in with Funimation audio. So obviously we have the full story of that whole thing on Joe B's podcast when I appeared to talk with him, about just the challenges of recording those 3. I would say everything else was just incredibly smooth. To have a beginning and an ending for this dub is really, really special. And, some of these voices I'm talking about, I'm not only talking about because I enjoyed them, I want you guys to go watch, and I want you to tell us what you think about it too. Feedback is really important on stuff like this, especially stuff that we're archiving and trying to keep alive for people, just because there's just not a ton of information about this out there now. And I feel that, I have so much information about this dub now that anybody that asks me anything, I can absolutely answer any question. And if I don't know, I know Joe will absolutely write back and help me answer those questions. So any questions anybody does have about this dub, please ask. Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. There's no such thing as a dumb question with a show that, especially this dub that is 17 years old and been around for a long time. It's just hadn't been on television in a long time. From the research I've done, it hasn't been on television at least since 2007. After it went into syndication, it did stay on television for quite a while in Singapore, at least up until 2007 that I could find out. And there were even rumors of a third English dub in Asia, but to be honest with you, it is this dub. This dub was on television in so many different places over time that, this was that quote-unquote third English dub. There was no third English dub. So through the research we've done and being able to find this particular dub, we have put that rumor to bed. So anybody that tells you there was a third English dub, that aired in Hong Kong or whatever, it did not happen. This is it. This dub went on television on a bunch of different channels and ended up airing in syndication. And this was not, and I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, this series of 52 episodes was never released on VCD, DVD, VHS, anywhere in Singapore. The episodes that we have found because Joe has saved them and was gracious enough to start sending them to me once I was, I wouldn't say beating his door down, but I was like, hey, you want to send me one? Okay, cool. We went ahead and did this, and then, you want to send more? So it was kind of funny. Eventually we got the whole thing, that the entire catalog he has. And guys, another thing I want to tell you, especially with all this Conan content, get a flash drive, back this stuff up. Download the high quality stuff if you can, and back everything up that you can, because this show is not only long, it has a long history. You never know what other finds we're going to have out there, when talking to people and kind of digging around, and who knows what somebody else has. If you don't email and write and ask, proof is that you never know. I would never know anything about this dub had I not tried to reach out to Joe himself. Obviously, he was gracious enough to return the email, which I did not expect, but I have to tell you that, having that rapport with him, and not only that, I feel like I've made a really good friend. I feel like I can, talk about just about anything with him, and he's a really nice guy, really kind dude. It's got somebody to, help me kind of get some information and kind of clear up some questions that I have, but I feel like I've made a really good friend in the process. And so if you ever have questions, guys, don't be afraid to take the initiative and ask and try to get information on your own and find things out. There's always somebody out there willing to help and to lend a hand. So any questions you guys have about this dub, please watch and leave feedback. We're going to really encourage that. Please leave as much feedback as you possibly can. We're going to be talking about this more on our Facebook page. We're going to go ahead and release a cast list of who we have for this series as well that'll debut on there, and we're also going to put a clip of the Singapore English dub on our Facebook page. We're going to do about 2 different clips today as we drop the episode, so you guys can take a look at it and give your feedback. But I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been a great day for us, obviously, to talk about this and to record this podcast, and I'm so happy. And special thanks to Joe for helping us preserve this, and really big thanks to the Apollo Dub Archive Group for not only preserving this piece of history, but allowing us to distribute it, in a variety of forms, and also for the torrent that they created on Naya as well. We're going to have links to a lot of this stuff, guys, in the description. Please check them out. Please leave your feedback. We would love your feedback on these characters and what you think of them. So we will talk to you next time as we dive into talking about Detective Conan, movie 22, Zero the Enforcer. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Case Closed podcast. If you like what you heard here, head on over to our Facebook and Twitter page to give us a like and a follow. And for more extra special content that you can't get anywhere else, subscribe to our Patreon page. Take care, guys, and we'll see you later.